Time we spend on our phones on these platforms is robbing us of what true community and connection actually is.
This is Well Done, a space where we explore the mind-skin connection, living in alignment, and what it actually means to live well and look your best. We don't talk about surface-level quick fixes here. This is about real insight, practical tools, and learning how to listen to your body. Let's go. If you've ever felt like social media has had an effect on your nervous system and your health, which I'm sure most of us have felt this way, then today's conversation is one you're really going to want to pay attention to. We are going to talk about burnout in the context of being visible online. And this isn't just for business owners who feel compelled to, have to post on Instagram, but it can also be for anyone who just feels pressure to share their lives on social media. But my guest today is Cara Chace. She's worked inside social media from almost every angle. She was managing a massive online community for the band Megadeth. She's run her own digital agency, and now she helps women entrepreneurs build businesses with more sustainable systems, stronger boundaries, and less dependency on social media. So I'm super excited for today's conversation. Welcome to the show, Cara.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you all about this.
Yes, I am super excited because I feel like it is very personally relevant to my own situation.
Yes.
But Cara, you have a very interesting background, I have to say. So tell
Mhm.
us about what it was like for you moving throughout your career before you even had a language for burnout. What were you experiencing with your own health as you built your career?
Yes, I was a federal special agent, and that was my first career right out of college. And as you can imagine, it was a very intense career. When you are working for the government, you are pretty much owned by the government. You have no control over your time, your energy, what you do with your day. A lot of your life decisions are determined by that career. So, very early in my 20s, into my mid 20s, I started having a lot of health problems that nobody could really figure out or name at the time. It was, oh gosh, probably 20 ish years ago at this point. The world of naturopathic medicine was just getting started. Things like food reactions and food sensitivities were just being explored, all of those things. But what I knew is that I was exhausted. I could never seem to feel rested. I never felt good. I had a lot of gut issues that doctors couldn't figure out. And I was just, the word that I would go to now is burnout. But at the time, we didn't have that language for it. So it was several years into my career when I found a naturopathic doctor, and we started working through all these things, and we had kind of come to the end of the line as far as trying to figure out why I just felt awful all the time, and my internal inflammation was off the charts as far as the blood tests that they did have for a lot of these things. And she looked me right in the eye and said, "Cara, your job is killing you."
Cool.
And that was that moment of like, I'm sorry, what now? Right? I wasn't sure what to do with that. And it was actually 3 years between her telling me that and when I was finally able to leave that career and separated from the government and quit my job in law enforcement. And during that time, I just continued to really struggle through those issues, kind of stuffing it all down and moving forward as a lot of high achievers, hoop jumpers, people pleasers, all of those things that you learn are just part of the hustle and part of having a high speed career.
Was it that you didn't really fully believe that stress could have that impact on your body? Or what was it that you were like, oh, I'll just deal with that another day?
Right. Nobody was talking about the mind gut connection, and no
Hmm.
one was talking about nervous system dysregulation. Those terms didn't exist. No one was connecting all of those pieces the way that we have been able to do in the last really only couple of years. So it was more, I had grown up with the story of you get a career, you do something high speed, intense, the hustle, you climb the ladder, whatever that looks like, and whatever your career or profession is, and you put having a family or your personal needs or taking care of yourself or getting enough sleep. Those things don't enter the decision matrix of how you spend your time, energy, or attention.
Yeah. So then what was it ultimately for you that so 3 years later you decided
Mhm.
to leave? What was the breaking point, or was there a breaking point?
Well, it was really situational. So, my husband, who was an agent at the time as well, he got a transfer to a different city, and the agency that I was with didn't have an office there. So it was kind of like, well, I guess now is when I'm quitting. So it was really more, he got a transfer, and that was the opportunity. At that time, I was 10 years into my career in law enforcement. So it was that, like, if I stayed in longer, it wouldn't make sense to leave because of the retirement and the benefits and all of those things I had invested in. So it was
Mhm.
kind of like, now's the time to do it if I'm going to do it. So I walked off into the great unknown, moved with my husband. We didn't have any children at the time, and it was really an opportunity that presented itself.
Okay. And then how did you get involved in the social media side?
Right. So this is the craziest story. So during this transition from leaving our hometown and where we worked and everybody we knew in my career to a different city where we didn't know anybody, I was leaving my career. I didn't have that built in like office people, I didn't have any of that. I had rediscovered the band Megadeth and their music. I've always been a metalhead since I was a teenager when I stopped listening to my parents' music and discovered what I liked. This is totally dorky. I don't know if anybody uses the word dorky now, but I joined their fan club. And it was a community where I was making friends and I was just having fun with people and talking about the music and the band. And it kind of bridged that time between leaving everything I had ever known and all of my friends and my career and all of that to the great unknown of whatever was next. I got very involved with that community. And very shortly after we moved, I got pregnant with our first child. And so there was this like, well, I'm not going to go get a job at this point. I didn't really know what I was doing, but this was the wild west of social media. So this was
Yeah.
like 2011, 2012. Instagram, I think, was barely around. It was only on iPhone. It wasn't even on Android yet. This was before paid ads on Facebook. So, like the heyday of organic reach and business pages. And the more I messed around with social media, the more I saw how the band could be using it, but they weren't. And there really weren't a lot of musicians at that time that were using it in the way that I could see it could be done. So I started volunteering, helping them moderate all their different Facebook pages. Eventually, at one point, I finally said, listen, I got a new baby. Diapers are expensive. I'm working like a ton of hours. I'm growing social media across all your platforms. You either need to start paying me or I need to go. So they did. They started paying me. I worked for them for a couple of years. I was interfacing with Universal Music Group, working on all the tour stuff that they were doing. And by the time I left, I was managing 13 million fans across
Wow.
17 social media accounts for them, all the different band members and Dave Mustaine in the band and all the different platforms. It was nuts. So I got a front row seat to like the beginning of social media on a large scale for a brand, even though it was a band. At the end of the day, it is a brand and a business. So that was wild. And it was definitely the whole like jumping into the deep end with both feet.
Yeah. My next question is probably a super loaded one, but what did you notice in terms of how social media in that era, right, versus today? Like, what are
Yeah.
some of those key differences? I guess the second question on that would be how is that impacting us health wise?
I think the biggest difference was when I was doing it with them, it was really pre ads. So
Mm.
paid advertising, pay to play. I was there for the great Facebook Armageddon of it was spring 2014 when Facebook launched ads and decided that it was going to be pay to play for businesses. And that whole very painful transition for not
Yeah.
only the band, but pretty much every business who had built their business on free marketing and free social media. So that was a huge change, that pay to play era that came in very quickly. And then it was also one of my favorite things about the role that I had there was I was the bridge between the fans and the band. And I loved that. Getting that one-on-one engagement, making fans feel seen, doing, cool stuff like tweeting during concerts and retweeting people that were there and, stuff that just it seems like a given now, but at the time it wasn't. So, what I've seen is that social media, when you have a business that's really fan based like that, whether it's music or something else, it's become way less community and fan driven than it used to be. I think Gary Vaynerchuk did something recently where he talked about how it's not social media anymore, it's interest media.
Mm,
And that is a really fantastic way to say that what we're seeing is this algorithm based echo chamber of what they have decided we should be interested in. And the authenticness of connection on social media, the social part of it is really doesn't exist anymore.
You think with each other or with brands and creators?
Both,
Okay.
both. We've been sold connection, and that's not what it is anymore. We're drowning in ads. We're drowning in suggestions for who to follow. We're drowning in clickbait, as we all
Mhm.
know. And I think we know these things. Like me saying any of these things isn't a revelation,
Yeah.
but what we haven't made the connection of what it's actually doing to us and our relationships and our sense of connection and community, redefining what social is and what we've been told it is versus that doesn't actually feel like that's what it is. So, going back to the whole mind body connection, I think more and more people are realizing that the time we spend, particularly on our phones, on these platforms, is robbing us of what true community and connection and being social with our people actually is, and our bodies feel it because we're wired to be social creatures.
Right. And that's not even including like what's happening with AI, right?
No, I
That's like a
know.
whole other can of worms on connection and
Yes.
social. So going back to your philosophy around social media is very interesting. Tell us
Mhm.
about what led you to now your philosophy around social media burnout and what you're doing with women. What was that journey like from managing, the
Yeah.
social media behind Megadeth to what you're doing today and why?
The quick story is in between Megadeth and what I'm doing today, I built a digital marketing agency. That was just based on the success and the knowledge and skills that I had built with the band and doing that all at a high level. So it was truly agency based. I had clients, I had a team, I had contractors. That was fine for a while. I built the business that everybody tells you that you should aim for. I built it. And I started having health issues, I guess at this point about 3 years ago, meaning I never felt rested. I didn't feel good. Kind of some of those symptoms started coming back in a really big way that I had experienced in law enforcement and that kind of high stress, demanding job in my early to mid 20s. Again, I was shoving it all down. It was, I've built this agency. I'm an entrepreneur, all the things that people tell you you should want. Then I started having the symptom that made me stop everything was I started having food reactions almost every single time I ate. So I was getting skin breakouts, but I was also getting like a sore mouth, swollen tongue, raw
Mm.
mouth is the only way I could describe it. My vision would blur when I ate. And then some little voice at some point was like, this shouldn't be happening. There's something very wrong here. And fortunately, by this time, medicine has come a long way and some of the diagnostic tools. And about 3 months after I started having those symptoms on a very regular daily basis, I was finally diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. I had mold toxicity. I had all these bacterial infections that come with the Lyme disease. And I realized I had to like hard stop on my business. I was to the point where I could barely function as a mom, just doing what I need to do for my family. I have 2 kids at this point. It was really hard to stop because it felt like failure. It felt like, who am I if I am not an entrepreneur? I'm running this, 6-figure business with all these clients and getting asked to speak and do all of these things. I can't just stop.
Mhm.
And my body reached a point at where I just was literally given no other choice. And thankfully, with the support of my husband and the life we've built for ourselves, I was able to do that, which I'm very, very grateful for. So, over the course of it was about 2 years that I stopped. I realized what I really wanted to teach was how to build a more sustainable business. So one that flexes with maybe your energy or your health problems or just your seasons of life that you go through as a mom or a partner or spouse, whatever it is, our lives change slowly and drastically, depending on what it is. And just building a business that doesn't rely on showing up the same way all the time, all day, every day. I pulled on all the skills that I had built to run a business, to build a business as a work from home mom of two, and going through everything that happened in 2020 with kids coming home for online school and still running a marketing agency and all of those things. And so I relaunched that and I started feeling into that and regrowing my business. And at the same time, I was also healing and at the final stages of detoxing all of the Lyme and the mold and all of that stuff. And then this very last year, it was December 2025. I take the last 2 weeks of the year off, like throw my phone in a drawer off. I don't do any posting. I don't even schedule posts. Like some people say, well, schedule all your posts, but I just take it off. We're just done. I realized that about halfway through that break, even though I wasn't eating perfectly, I stopped having food reactions and I felt amazing. And at first, I thought, oh, I finally detoxed everything. I knew I was clear of Lyme, but there were still some symptoms hanging on. It was like, I'm done with this. Like, I've beat this. I can move on with my life. I felt so good. And then the Friday before the first Monday of the year, I started thinking about my social media strategy. I started thinking about B-roll. I started thinking about what do I want to post on Instagram, how often and in what form. I started thinking about, do I want to do a YouTube strategy, like all of the digital marketing, social media things. And it was about half a day of leaning into all of that. And I started reacting to every single thing that I ate. And it was like any food elimination diet or anything you do, like if you're reacting to something on your skin and you stop using everything and then you add, it was so clear that, oh, my body is reacting to just the thought of social media marketing and being online constantly.
Wow. That's crazy. Okay, so then that turned into your philosophy, the social media burnout, this idea that women don't need, or your focus is women entrepreneurs. So
Yes.
how do you then advise somebody on staying visible
Yep.
without becoming a victim to social
Right.
media?
Right. So I am not anti social media. I do want to be clear about that. I am not somebody that's going to say delete all of your accounts and get a brick phone and, whatever it is. I am not somebody that's going to say just walk off into the woods and live in a cabin somewhere. The reality is social media is here to stay. And if you're in business, it is expected that there's some level of visibility. So, with all that being said, my entire point and philosophy is you do have control over what you do and when, and you can be so much more intentional about what you post, where you're visible, and what you're doing than you've probably been led to believe.
Hmm.
So, one of the phrases that I use, guides that I use, is called signposts, not stages. That is one of the philosophies that I outline or the guides that I outline in my upcoming book. But it is about using your social media accounts as your business card, like your website or whatever else you have out there, using those as a place to show this is me, this is what my business is about, and this is where you can find me, and directing people to where you are active and engaged. So it doesn't have to be not using social media at all. Maybe it's you take a look at your analytics and you see that, you know what? Instagram is where I get tons of web traffic. If it is, double down on that and use all of your other accounts to point to where you're actually engaged. For some people who really don't want to be on social media at all, that are really looking for that, being able to take a step back and a deep breath, directing people to your email list or your website, or maybe you have a podcast or whatever it is that you're building that's more long-term content. that helps you build that bridge and that engagement relationship in a more authentic way that's not based on an algorithm.
How do you coach somebody who feels like they need to be on social because of what their peers are doing
Right.
or the trends they're seeing? Like they feel like I have to stay relevant.
Most people feel that way, and it's because these platforms are designed to pull on those fear FOMO strings. So I go back to I am a data and information person. And I don't know if this comes back to my years as a criminal investigator, but when somebody says, well, I have to be on Instagram for my business, I say, okay, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the numbers and go from there. So what I found when I realized the food reactions were a result of me diving back into social media and strategy. I decided to completely stop posting on my feed on Instagram, which is where I was the most active. It was the most low-hanging fruit for me. So I was really only posting one story every week or two, but I was not posting on my feed at all. And I took a look at my data and my analytics in March. So I stopped the very beginning of January. My website referrals from Instagram had not dropped at all. And my Instagram was getting more engagement than the previous 90-day period. So when you look at the data and you look at, okay, I'm on this content treadmill, I am thinking in captions instead of enjoying my life. I am scanning for B-roll instead of looking at my kids in the eye when they want to show me something. I am turning every moment of my life into content, spending 7 hours a day in the doom scroll and the comparisonitis and looking at what everybody else is doing. And you look at the data and you see something like that, like stopping all of this made no difference in what Instagram was doing for my business. That's an opportunity to really stop and question what you've been told to think.
But that's assuming you already have somewhat of an audience and people, clicking on your Instagram profile. Like,
Sure.
what if you're new and you're like, how do I build an audience? Like, what would you advise that person?
I think what a lot of people have forgotten because of this low-hanging fruit, free marketing, social media world we live in is that there are tried and true methods that are long-term that are still extremely valid and still work. So those would be things like SEO on your website, blogging for content and SEO, doing things like long form videos on YouTube because YouTube is owned by Google, which means it's SEO driven, and your email list, which is your
Mhm.
direct connection to people in their inboxes without an algorithm. So, those core fundamental marketing strategies still absolutely work. And social media was designed, I shouldn't say designed. Social media at first was a way to get that long-term deep content out in little snippets for our goldfish brains. And at some point we bought into this is now the core marketing pillar
Yeah.
instead of it's a way to get the core content out to more people. So I would say if you're brand new and you are like drowning in which course should I buy and should I be, doing some DM strategy and all of the stuff that's out there right now, is look at if you've built core content that is going to be long-term for your brand and is going to last. So blogging, SEO, email marketing, those foundational aspects of marketing that are still valid today.
Okay. So for somebody who doesn't have a business, right? Let's say they are a
Mhm.
professional and they're using LinkedIn and they're thinking, I want to feel some pressure to post on LinkedIn about what I'm doing in my career. That's an
Right.
example. And then the second example would be maybe just somebody who is, I feel like my friends are, they're sharing their family trip, they're sharing their really great, amazing European vacation. And I feel the need to share something. Like, how would you coach those types of people?
So somebody who's a professional and doesn't have a business, I would say this really goes back to a couple things. So when I was a special agent, one of the things that was part of our job would be doing criminal investigations that could potentially lead to criminal trials where you would be called up on the stand to testify. about your investigation, your reports, the evidence, the findings, all of those things. And this was right at the time when Facebook came out. People were posting really embarrassing pictures of their Friday nights at the bar and all of that, the newness and almost naivete of putting your life on social media.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much standard that someone who's a special agent, it's probably not a good idea to have public social media, because even before people started talking about the internet is forever, we knew that a defense attorney could put up a picture on the stand of if you had posted a not so flattering picture from your Friday night, downtown, to try and impeach your integrity or
Yeah.
whatever it was. While most people are not special agents, obviously, you need to think in terms of is this professional? Is this emotional? Is this something I'm going to regret posting a week from now? Whatever it is. So there's just a level of professionalism. If you feel pressured to be present, I would say, be visible. If you are not doing that authentically, it's going to come across every single time. So there is something about the way we're wired as human beings that probably goes back to that social aspect where we can tell when people are not being authentic. And while it's not as easy to tell that online as it is in person, you can still tell. And I think anybody who has been in the depths of social media and having their own personal or professional profiles can attest to when something's not quite right. I, again, would challenge anybody who's feeling that pressure to really think about why have I bought into this? Do some thinking around what would this look like if I did this differently? Or can I just put up a boundary and it is what it is? People have forgotten their own personal boundaries when it comes to the online space. And I guess that feeds into your second question about somebody just, personally living their life. I felt a lot of pressure about halfway through my 10 years owning a digital marketing agency to do the whole share my life as a mom entrepreneur. And at the time, I knew that was something I was never going to be comfortable with because of my years doing criminal investigations. I've done a whole lot of child exploitation investigations. And so I know more than the average person about what happens with these photos when you put them online. That was a line I had to draw in the sand about posting pictures of my children in my personal life. And I think what it comes down to is you have to make the decision about your values and your lines in the sand. Is there a potential for you to have to make the decision between a type of business or a type of success or whatever and what your personal values are? Hopefully that's not the case, but you might have to decide that. And that is a personal decision for everyone. For me, I decided I was not going to build a business and I was not interested in a business that required my nervous system as collateral, period. I will double down on the things that don't make me physically, emotionally, and mentally feel the way clearly social media was. And that is the only way that I am willing to be an entrepreneur and run a business.
That's a really good point, is that sometimes you feel like posting and you actually feel like posting, and that's like an authentic place to be in versus the I have to do this.
Right.
And good point on the posting your kids too, because I switched my personal account to more of a creator account.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I have like pictures of my kids on here. So now I've removed them all. And I just still think about that. Like, oh no, they're still out there. It
Mhm.
really freaks me out.
You can only make the best decisions
Yeah.
for the information you have at the time. Everybody makes mistakes. I have posted pictures of my kids before and then gone, oh, I shouldn't have done it. Right. Or the very beginning of Facebook, when it was just my personal profile and I had it locked down, I would post pictures of my kids for the benefit of the friends that I had on Facebook. And this was more than 11, 12 years ago at this point, which is like a whole nother world it's like olden times of social media. And I'd have to talk to friends and family about you cannot reshare pictures of my children because I don't know who you're friends with, right? And eventually I just stopped posting pictures of them and scraped everything, much like you did. But there's no point in beating yourself up over decisions that you wish you hadn't done. It's just, moving forward with the information you have now and being super clear about your values and your priorities.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book, your upcoming book. What do
Yes.
you hope, or give us a little bit of the tease on the book and what you hope people will learn or walk away with when they read it?
Yes. So the title is still working. It is slated to come out in September of 2026, and it's Social Media Burnout. It's about how to ditch the scroll, quiet your nervous system, and market your business without the chaos. So it's a lot of what we talked about today. There's way more stories about law enforcement and Megadeth and me pulling the thread over the years of what social media and the online space was doing to my health and my nervous system. Part one is really about a lot of those stories and the very slow realization over many years about what was happening. And then part two is about what to do with all of that. So, how to start assessing those things like where should I really be online? What's worth it? Questioning everything you've been told, questioning that FOMO feeling that we've all been sold, how to really double down on those long term and long form content strategies, how to quit being somebody that defaults to scrolling, how to put better guidelines around how you're using your phone and these apps. So some of it is very prescriptive, but it's also take what you need and leave the rest. You might not have literal physical reactions like I've had to social media. Maybe it's more, I just feel like I'm spending too much time and I don't know what to do about it. So it is a smorgasbord of ideas and tips and how to's about taking your time, energy, and attention back and being so much more purposeful about how you show up online, either personally or for your business.
Great. If you could leave a tip for somebody who is listening and is thinking, am I spending too much time on social media? Or they really identify with what you mentioned about thinking in captions, seeing everything as a B-roll opportunity. Where should
Yeah.
they start? Because for me, I'm like, I'm not going to quit cold turkey and like turn off my social media.
I'll give you two things. First, don't have your phone in your bedroom. That was one of the most life-changing habits that I tweaked when I first started realizing this is all just too much for me. Most people, I don't want to quote a percentage because I don't want to get it wrong, but it's most people pick up their phone within 5 minutes of waking up in the morning. What that does to your brain, the way that trains your brain to immediately start consuming instead of just giving yourself space to wake up and greet the day, it's really incredibly valuable with how you feel and how you show up in your day. Plug your phone in somewhere else. Don't have it plugged in on your nightstand or in your bedroom. The second would be use your app timers. Even if you start going around them, because it's pretty easy to do, you will start noticing how often you ignore your limit, how uncomfortable and twitchy you get if you're out of time. And those are things to observe about yourself and what your brain has been trained to do with your phone and these platforms. Big changes don't happen all at once. Like you said, you're not going to quit cold turkey. It's about the noticing because these platforms don't want you to notice what's happening to you or your time, energy, and attention. So put your app timers on. For instance, I allow myself 20 minutes a day across all social media. So that's a combination of any social media apps I have on my phone. I get 20 minutes a day. What it's trained me to do is use my desktop for the things that are business and truly marketing focused instead of saying I'm going to go into Instagram to post this or do something business related. And an hour later, I'm stuck in the scroll.
Hmm.
So using your app timers will be a way for you to notice how you're physically and mentally reacting to having those limits on giving your attention to these platforms. And that's a really great place to start with self-awareness.
How has putting in practice these tips affected your own, well, A, your own wellness and mental health, and B, your own business?
Yeah. So, number one, I'm just happier. There is something that I notice the handful of times in the last 6 months that I have, for whatever reason, been in the doom scroll where the rest of my day is not great. And we don't really realize what's happening when we just feel cruddy or that comparisonitis, or we feel like we are not where we should be, or you realize, well, there's 3 courses I wanna take about how to do this all better, and I don't know when I'm gonna have time to do any of it. You get in a funk. And since I've made these changes, I'm not in a funk like that anymore. I use my time purposefully and in a way that fills my cup instead of draining it. For my business, what I've noticed is that it has freed up so much creativity for my own content, philosophies, blog writing, what I want to say. When you're constantly consuming other people's content, everybody starts sounding like everybody else. And that's
Yeah.
part of it is the AI thing that's happening. But part of it is also you're not coming up with your own ideas. Everything is colored by everybody else's. So it has freed up this creativity and this clarity for myself about my own thoughts and philosophies and what I want to teach and what I want to share that is not colored by what everybody else is doing. Third, I took all of the time that I used to spend creating content and being on social media and put that into writing my book, which is something I've wanted to do for a very long time. And there's no better long form content that is going to last and be a testament to my business and what I have to share with the world and help the people that I want to help than writing a book that anybody can pick up versus a reel that is gone into the ether within hours.
That's really inspiring for me. I think I'm probably going to try some version of this week so that I can be more creative because I'm like with you on that. My head's all over the place whenever
Yes.
I go on social media.
Yes.
So if you could go back in time and talk to your former special agent self or your former Megadeth social media creator self, what would be the advice you'd give?
It would be the advice that I give everybody now, which is question everything. Question the rules and make your own. We are told so many things when we start either our professional career as young adults or you get a job that, like I was, it was trial by fire and jumping into this whole world that I didn't know and was learning on the spot to then the whole online entrepreneur industry that came up out of social media and the online space we have now, where you learn to not trust yourself. You learn to defer to the experts and the gurus and the influencers or the people that are ahead of you in your career. And there's a lot of value in listening to advice and people's perspectives. But I wish that I had not taken everything at face value. And I wished that I had trusted myself more to question what I was being told to do and how to show up in my life more than I did at the time.
Were there specific things that when you look back, you're like, I shouldn't have listened to that advice?
Not with my 2 previous careers. So in law enforcement, I mean, when I quit, my coworkers thought I was crazy because the benefits are so good and the pay was so good and all of these things, and I thought they were crazy for giving their lives away to the government and their health and all of those things. So I'm someone once I've had a really deep realization, I am not afraid to flip the table and make a change. I did that with law enforcement. I did that with leaving the band. At some point, it became just not cool anymore for what it was doing to my nervous system, which I go all into that in the book and what I was doing in that role. It really has been more this online entrepreneur space and this social media space where I realized there's a difference between someone being really good at marketing and being able to deliver on the promise that they're selling. And I think anybody that is in this space understands exactly what I'm talking about. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on masterminds and high-level courses and programs where I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do.
Mm.
And it was not the right fit for me, or they were telling me to do things that were never going to be my personality, like dancing on TikTok or being in DMs, 2 hours a day, cold DMing people, all of that stuff that I just figured I hadn't found the key or the secret yet. And so I kept looking outside of myself and spent a lot of money and a lot of time making those mistakes. So it
Yeah.
really is this industry in particular where I've struggled the most with making those big changes and flipping the table.
That's such a good point, I think, to end on is that this is self-trust because there is now more so with AI, like even more online tools,
Yeah.
online mentorship programs, masterminds, like you said.
Mhm.
How can people find more about you, your work, your book coming up?
Yeah, everything's on my website, as it should be. So if you go to carachace.com and it's CARACHACE, everything is there, whether that's you want to dive into blogs or check out the podcast or get on the book pre-sale list, all of those things you can find there.
I'd love to know if you found this episode helpful or interesting. If so, please share it with a friend. You can also find me on Instagram and let me know your thoughts, or leave a review if you've been enjoying this podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.